The night Ethan Carter agreed to go on a date, he expected nothing more than an awkward dinner and a few sarcastic jokes from his friends later. What he didn't expect was the moment he would walk into that restaurant, see who was waiting for him, and completely freeze. For 2 years, Ethan had lived the same quiet routine in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. Work, pick up his daughter, make dinner, help with homework, fall asleep exhausted on the couch. Life had become predictable after the storm that shattered it. His wife had passed away suddenly from a rare illness, leaving him alone to raise their 7-year-old daughter, Chloe. At first, Ethan barely held things together. The grief was heavy, the silence in the house unbearable. Every corner reminded him of the life that used to be there. But Chloe needed him. So every morning he forced himself out of bed, packed her lunch, braided her messy hair the way his wife used to, and pretended he was stronger than he felt. His friends had watched the change. The once energetic man who used to laugh the loudest at every gathering had slowly turned quiet. He rarely joined them anymore. When he did, he smiled politely but left early. That was why one evening his closest friends Marcus, Ryan, and Caleb decided something had to change. They planned a simple idea: set Ethan up on a blind date. When they told him, Ethan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. A date? After everything he had been through? It sounded ridiculous. But his friends insisted. They told him it wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about reminding him he was still alive. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed, mostly because he knew they wouldn't stop asking otherwise. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and people helping each other heal, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that life can surprise us when we least expect it. The night of the date arrived quietly. Ethan almost canceled 3 times. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror adjusting a navy shirt he hadn't worn in years. His hands felt stiff, unfamiliar with the nervous ritual. Dating felt like something from another lifetime. Meanwhile, Chloe sat on the edge of the bed watching him with curious eyes. She smiled in a way that reminded him painfully of her mother. She told him he looked handsome. That simple sentence nearly broke him. But he smiled back, kissed her forehead, and promised he would be home before bedtime. The restaurant Marcus had chosen sat along the river in downtown Columbus, warm with soft lights glowing through tall windows. It was the kind of place couples went for anniversaries and quiet celebrations. Ethan stepped inside feeling completely out of place. He expected the evening to feel awkward, maybe even pointless. But he promised himself he would at least stay long enough to be polite. A host guided him toward a small table near the window, and that's when it happened. Halfway across the dining room, Ethan suddenly stopped walking. His heart slammed against his chest. For a moment, the entire world seemed to fall silent, because sitting at that table was someone he recognized, Olivia Bennett. He hadn't seen her in nearly 10 years. Back when Ethan and his wife were newly married, Olivia had been their neighbor. She had been a nursing student at the time, living in the apartment across the hall, always kind, always cheerful. She had babysat Chloe once, when she was a baby. Life had moved everyone in different directions after that. Ethan had moved, Olivia had transferred hospitals, and eventually they lost touch. But here she was, and she looked just as surprised to see him. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. Ethan felt frozen in place, unsure whether to laugh, apologize, or walk away. But Olivia simply stood up with a gentle smile, the kind of smile that carried warmth rather than awkwardness. They sat down slowly, both still processing the strange coincidence. Marcus had apparently known Olivia through work but never realized she and Ethan already knew each other. What started as a blind date suddenly felt like a strange reunion. At first, the conversation moved cautiously. They talked about work, about the city, about how much Columbus had changed over the years, but soon something shifted. Olivia asked about Chloe, not casually, genuinely. And Ethan found himself talking about his daughter more than he had talked about anything in a long time. He told her how Chloe loved drawing pictures of their dog, how she insisted on pancakes every Saturday morning, and how she had recently decided she wanted to become an astronaut. Olivia listened carefully, her eyes soft with understanding. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix anything. She simply listened. Then the conversation turned toward Ethan's past, the loss he rarely talked about. For the first time in years, Ethan shared what those months after his wife's death had really felt like. The fear, the loneliness, the feeling of trying to be both parents at once. He expected the moment to feel heavy. But strangely, it didn't. Because Olivia understood grief better than most. Working as a nurse in the oncology unit had taught her how fragile life could be. She had seen families struggle, lose hope, and somehow find strength again. Instead of pity, she gave Ethan something far more powerful: respect. The evening stretched longer than Ethan expected. The river outside reflected city lights like scattered stars, and the restaurant slowly emptied around them. At one point, Ethan realized something surprising. For the first time in years, he had forgotten to feel sad. The conversation felt easy, natural, alive. When the check finally arrived, Ethan walked Olivia outside beneath the cool night air. The city hummed softly around them. Neither of them rushed to leave. Ethan admitted something honestly. He told her he almost hadn't come tonight. Olivia laughed softly and said she almost canceled too. But then she said something that stayed with him. Sometimes the most important moments in life begin with the plans we nearly avoid. They stood there for a while, sharing quiet smiles. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it felt real. Before they parted, Olivia told Ethan she would love to meet Chloe someday, only if Ethan felt comfortable with it. The sincerity in her voice made it clear she meant it. That night, Ethan drove home slowly through the quiet streets. The same streets that had once felt empty now felt different. Not magically healed, not suddenly perfect, but lighter. When he opened the door, Chloe was still awake on the couch, pretending she hadn't waited up. She immediately asked if the date was weird. Ethan laughed and told her something surprising. It wasn't weird at all. In fact, it was the nicest night he had had in a very long time. Chloe smiled proudly, as if she had expected nothing less. Weeks passed after that evening. Ethan and Olivia met again, then again, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for walks by the river, sometimes just to talk. Slowly, carefully, Ethan began to feel something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. Not the kind that erased the past, but the kind that allowed the future to exist beside it. Olivia never tried to replace the memories Ethan carried. Instead, she respected them, and that respect made space for something new to grow. Months later, Chloe finally met Olivia. They spent an afternoon at the park feeding ducks and laughing over ice cream that melted faster than they could eat it. Watching them together, Ethan felt a quiet emotion rise in his chest. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. Gratitude for friends who refused to let him disappear into loneliness. Gratitude for a daughter who reminded him why he kept going. And gratitude for the unexpected night that changed everything. Because sometimes the moments that feel like jokes turn out to be the moments that quietly rebuild a broken heart. Before we reach the end of this story, leave a comment saying, "Second chances exist." It helps this message reach more people who might need to hear it today. Years later, Ethan would still remember that night, clearly the night he walked into a restaurant expecting nothing, and froze when life surprised him with something he never thought possible again. And if this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who believes that love, hope, and healing can appear when we least expect them. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one night, one unexpected meeting, and friends who refuse to give up on you.